We all know Smokey the Bear.
The next time you come to the forest, do me a favor.
We're familiar with the message urging people to be responsible with fire in forests, and we see the signs on our way to the mountains or the Oregon coast. But there is growing concern that this upcoming wildfire season will be substantially worse than any we've seen in recent years. Some scientists have published a dire forecast claiming that climate change is making conditions ripe for a bad upcoming Oregon wildfire season. University of Oregon geography professor Dan Gavin says the recent climate shift is fueling the speculation.
Well, they're projected to become worse. Climate fluctuations in the past strongly linked to forest fire occurrence. Climates change and drive the forest fire regime. And we see that forests have changed a lot even within just the last few thousand years. One lightning storm could start hundreds of ignitions, and an event like that followed by a few weeks of really dry weather and some winds can set up so much fire that they're impossible to extinguish.
Back in Portland, at the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center, forest fires are always on the mind of John Sultenberger, the program manager for fire weather at the U.S. Department of the Interior. He's responsible for deciding when to order in planes and firefighting equipment.
What the center does is make decisions about distribution of emergency management resources throughout the Northwest geographic area of Oregon and Washington. That's primarily wildfire, although we do mobilize emergency management resources for floods and hurricanes and hazardous materials cleanup and things like that. We gather information here about the status of ongoing incidents around our area and in other areas, and then we feed that information to decision makers who are tasked with distributing emergency management resources.
But he says despite the dire predictions for a rough fire season, there are still many factors that need to come together for a massive wildfire summer.
Certainly we know that it gets dry enough just about every summer for us to have large, costly type fires, but you got to have the optimum combination of dryness happening at the same place where there's ignition sources and then some kind of weather event that helps propel a fire and makes it get big. Some of the things are rather obvious, like dry, a period of dry weather is going to contribute to it, but that's not the only factor. You've got to have ignitions and you've got to have some kind of propelling force coming in there too.
As far as precautions, Saltenberger believes many fires are still preventable.
Shocking the number of people who don't carefully put out their campfire after, when they're done with their weekend and going home. Smokey Bear's message about pouring water and using shovels to bury a campfire until it's dead out remains as true as ever. The number of fires that I've just discovered on my own that have been left unattended or smoldered back to life when the weather got windy and dry is higher than you might think.
This simulation shows just how a simple cigarette thrown from a moving car can smolder, grow, expand, and carried by the wind turn into a fire like this. But some experts are hesitant to jump straight into climate change's sudden impact on forest fires. Director of Environmental Studies Professor Alan Dickman explains how intricate making this connection can be.
Yeah, the whole carbon storage and fires is a complicated system that really depends a lot on your scale of analysis. It's true that when a forest burns, it puts carbon in the air. There's still a lot of carbon left because the big bowls is where most of the carbon is, and those don't volatilize. It's the needles and things like that. So after a fire, if you have killed the trees, but you've got big trunks on the ground, and then you've got young trees growing, they may be pulling carbon out of the air for a while. So it really depends on the time scale over which you look at that, and I suppose what kind of forest was there. If it was a young plantation that burns, most of that carbon that's above ground goes into the air because it's small stuff. If it's a big old forest that burns, a lot of that carbon is going to stay in charcoal or in big bowls for a long time. It's not going to rot very fast.
And according to Saltenberger, the connection climate change has had on forest fires at this point is still hard to see.
We don't see anything right now, anticipate anything unusual. We look at predictive tools like the fluctuation in El Nino, La Nina oscillation and other oscillations that happen in the atmosphere. And right now those are running right about neutral, so they're not swinging one way or the other. Therefore, it's difficult to try to make a long-range guess as to what the climate and fire season are going to be like without any predictive tools that are any hope of being reliable. So at this point, we just don't know.
Although the predictions certainly have many concerned, it appears we'll just have to wait and see. For Oregon News, I'm Josh Volvovic.